Hey guys, so I kind of just wanted to do a video kind of about my thoughts about this kind of political debate between the left and the right about Native Americans. Kind of this, I like how the right is trying to attack Native American history to point out that natives were savage and genocidal and bad. And I get the debate because the people on the right are sick of maybe kind of this woke agenda that seems to criticize white people for for history, for what has happened to Native Americans. And I think it fits this channel. My channel, this is my new channel here. It's specifically for Latter-day Saints. I just want to help us consider different perspectives and think about things differently and come to a truer idea of history. And I'll talk about politics and Native American issues and some theology and stuff. I like to think of myself more as kind of a moderate. I'm not a member of either of the Republicans or Democrats. I mean, I like a bit of both on every side. For Republicans, I've really liked the kind of conservative family values and traditional ways of doing things. I also like Democrats for being more conscientious of the earth and health care programs and things like that, and especially for caring for minorities. Now, whether these parties do these things, I kind of think they're both a bit corrupt. Not the average person in the party, but when you get to leadership and stuff, money speaks louder. It's frustrating. And there's this incentive to just attack the other side and make up stuff about them. And I've also been toying with libertarianism because I kind of like the simple approach and the no war, no violent approach. And it kind of speaks to me as a Native American and the history I've been learning. It was a good book I read where it was talking about how what the U.S. Army learned during all the Native American wars is kind of what built it into this war machine we have today. So I like libertarians, but I do think there's, usefulness in government. But anyways, it's more the far right that's pushing against the far left here, especially on social media with like influencers or political hosts like Matt Walsh. She's coming out with a series about the true history of Native Americans. And really, it feels like it just comes down to the right doesn't like what the left is saying about them. So they're going to go all out and not meet in the middle. The left doesn't like what the right says, and they're going to go all out instead of meeting in the middle. And so the far right is really pushing against this peaceful, savage myth, which, I actually agree with. Native Americans weren't peaceful. No civilization was totally peaceful. Everyone participated in war and genocide and killing and ethnic cleansing. As I've been studying my own Native American history, I've kind of been surprised about here in Utah as well. Before Europeans, you had the Barrier Canyon peoples. They were like immigrants. They were settlers. They they came into the land, and then they disappeared or left, and then the Fremont people came in. Maybe the Barrier Canyon people turned into the Fremont, or maybe there was some war and killing between them. Fremont people lived here around 0 AD to 1000 AD. And then the Numic speaking people, the Shoshone and the Utes, came in around 1000 to 1300 AD, and they took over the land. More settlers, more immigrants, and I'm sure there is some violence mixed in there. And then my own people, the Navajo, came from the Canada-Alaska area around the same time period as the Numic speaking people, and they came into the area, and eventually they kind of took over the Four Corners area where the Pueblo people were. And maybe there was some violence and stuff, and I know that Hopi have traditions of Navajo coming in and being violent. For the most part, there was a lot of drought happening, and so that influenced people moving in and out. But anyways, even Utah has a history of settlers and immigrants and probably violence. And so there's no denying that. But when it comes, like, we should be able to admit that. We should be able to admit kind of this history from white Europeans and the violence there as well, and the bad things that happen. And I mean, sorry, loud car. As Americans, we grew up on the story of the righteous, patriotic American colonialists defending themselves from the evil British Empire. And we have no problem with demonizing the other side. But I think just as there is this peaceful native myth, we also need to recognize that there is a peaceful settler myth. I mean, there are some bad things that happened in the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. And we could admit both sides have had issues and problems. But I think that shouldn't stop us from asking ourselves, well, what side did more? And also, it shouldn't stop us from asking ourselves, why are we suppressing some of this history, and why do we get offended by it? And politically, I mean, I don't see much hope to convincing people on the far right or on the far left, because their politics has basically become their religion. But as Latter-day Saints, I think we are better than that. And we can and should admit when we're wrong. And that's basically Christ's gospel, is turning the other cheek and humbling yourself and serving your neighbor and helping the weak. And so, especially Latter-day Saints, Christians and Latter-day Saints, the good ones should be able to kind of admit and see this history for what it is, and stop this kind of like pointing the fingers at the other side, but also kind of look at reality here. And the way I kind of see it is, for 500 years since Christopher Columbus until maybe a century ago, Native Americans were viewed as the savages, as the uneducated ones needing white people to save them. And it's only been in the last 100 years where we've kind of flipped that around and have been saying, okay, maybe it was white settlers who brought with them this kind of racism and stuff, and then go beyond that, because there's massacres and real genocides, especially in places like California, and ethnic cleansing. And even here in Utah Valley, where I am, Latter-day Saints forced the Timpanogos people out of the valley. And I just think it's important to see and recognize those things. And especially as Latter-day Saints, especially because we have a theology around Native Americans. And I think in some ways we need to reevaluate what part of our theology about Native Americans is doctrinal and what part of it is racist. 19th century racism that we've kind of carried with us from the past. And we need to start trimming the edges and acknowledging things. And to some Latter-day Saints in the political right, that might sound like woke talk. To me, it just sounds like being adult and being mature and learning and being a better person and being a Christian. And nothing should stop us from that. I understand it kind of hurts our identity. So for like the political right, it hurts their identity of patriotic Americans when we point out horrible massacres. I think it's the same with Latter-day Saints. It hurts some of our patriotic identity as pioneers who came into the West from persecution and settled this land. And that's kind of all we're told. We're not really told all the Native American conflicts that happened here. And my channel is kind of on this journey of discovering that. And I apologize if I've been getting political lately, but I can't really separate the two, because as you study Native American history, especially when Europeans arrive, it becomes political really quick. And I've noticed that there's history junkies who love to learn about Native Americans before Christopher Columbus, because there's no politics and drama there. And then history junkies who start learning about Native Americans after Christopher Columbus start to feel some conflict and politics and identity being, I guess, attacked. And so I've noticed as my channel that I was on was originally ancient pre-Columbian Native American history, and it was doing good. And then once I kind of switched to post-Columbian Native American history, it kind of went down a bit. It also went down because I started talking about Latter-day Saint topics on that channel, and so that's why I'm starting this one, because this channel is just for Latter-day Saints, and that's what I care about the most. And then there was also this kind of political drama about Christopher Columbus, and that's an interesting one, because the Book of Mormon seems to directly talk about Christopher Columbus. And I did notice one thing last night, though, as I was reading the Book of Mormon. It's that, so the Book of Mormon says that basically the Spirit wrought upon Columbus, and he was inspired to discover the Americas. And there's a whole lot more to that, and I'll eventually do videos about that, but basically that's what the Book of Mormon says. And so part of us might think, if the Spirit wrought upon him, maybe he was righteous and perfect. And he does say that he felt guided. So there's that. But what I read last night was that in the Book of Mormon, when Nephi is kind of arguing with his brothers, Laman and Lemuel are definitely portrayed as wicked people. And it's the part where they're at Bountiful and Nephi is arguing with them and tells them if they touch him or anything, they'll die. He says the Spirit of God was upon him so much that it scared them. But it specifically says that the Spirit wrought upon Laman and Lemuel, which basically means the Spirit can rot upon wicked people, bad people, complex people. We probably shouldn't, fall into the trap of categorizing people as pure wicked and pure righteous. And I understand that Columbus, he was a man of his time, but we can still point things out. And it's going to be an uphill battle, I feel. It's going to take a long time too. So, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Another thing is that the Book of Mormon, I'm reading a book right now about colonialism in the Book of Mormon. And actually, this author, their essay is what kind of got me on this journey a year or so ago, because I noticed some things that they got wrong about the Book of Mormon being a colonial racist book. And I'm trying to make a video about it, but I wanted to share some quick thoughts. And the author tries to make a point that the Book of Mormon is a colonial book. And the author is really strict about it being that way. But I think the Book of Mormon, if you strip it down to its core, can be pure and good. And that this diamond, as President Nelson called it, it could be a diamond, but it can be misinterpreted and misused by our culture in 19th century racism and supremacy and politics. And I think that's more of what's happening here. Is the Book of Mormon actually says a lot of good things, but our culture has kind of twisted it to suit our needs in different ways. And you see that with the Bible too. And to call the Book of Mormon a racist book without even kind of attempting to understand some of the research and messages it shares, when you strip away all of that, all of the fluff around it and bring it down to its core, to call it a racist book without learning about that stuff, I just think isn't fair. For example, I'll share one idea. It's that I think what the most important thing to know about the Book of Mormon, as far as answering hard questions, is knowing that the Book of Mormon is a record of one group of people surrounded by many groups of people who were already here in the Americas. And when you understand that, and when you actually read the research about that, I mean, it's like profound, amazing how much research there is, or how much evidence there is in the Book of Mormon of other peoples around them. So like when Lehi arrives in the Americas, just in a few decades or something, they start building cities and planting corn and having wars. Like, you can't do that with a group of 30 or 50 people. You have to have mixed with other groups. And I mean, also just the whole way that we're not going to go into all of this. This is going to be my main video I want to do. There's a lot to it. Like, for example, the idea that Nephites and Lamanites, they're not necessarily blood ancestor family groups. It specifically says in the Book of Mormon that Nephites and Lamanites are now political groups. If you're just supportive of Nephi, whether you were born under him, if you just supported Nephi, even if you're from an outside group, you become a Nephite. And I think that's one way we should think about the Book of Mormon. So anyways, there's just a lot of evidence that the Book of Mormon peoples were one group surrounded by many, and that solves a ton of questions, a ton of accusations, and accusations like, why can't we find DNA? Well, probably because this was a group of 50 people surrounded by millions of people, and after a couple thousand years, that DNA would get lost. Why can't we find archaeological evidence? Well, we can't find archaeological evidence for a lot of peoples because new civilizations come and take over the other one and destroy the other one, and that's exactly what happens in the Book of Mormon. Why can't we find the location of the Book of Mormon? Well, this is one group, probably in like a 800 square mile area at most, which is small compared to the entire Americas. And that's not to say that there's no evidence. I mean, I think the Book of Mormon happened in Mesoamerica because there's so many things in the Book of Mormon that hint at Mesoamerican culture. But that doesn't mean the Book of Mormon peoples were the Maya. That means the Book of Mormon peoples were a small group surrounded by the Maya. And the Maya weren't even a single group. They were groups of tons of different city-states. And I mean, like, just an evidence, like when Jacob, the prophet, starts teaching his people, and Jacob's like an early prophet in the Americas. When he starts teaching his people, he starts talking about the Gentiles. So why would Jacob talk about Gentiles to his group of 20? It wouldn't necessarily make sense unless there were Gentiles around him. It would hit closer to home if they could apply those scriptures directly to them in that situation rather than something too abstract thousands and thousands of years earlier. Anyways, I mean, there's just tons of evidences and stuff. And when you bring the Book of Mormon down to its core, it solves the issue of colonialism. Because a big argument in colonial that people have about the Book of Mormon being a racist colonial book is that it takes away the history from Native Americans and replaces it with this white man's history. And that's wrong. Like, imagine if, I don't know, a Catholic started rewriting Latter-day Saint history, we'd be super offended. So I get why Native Americans would be offended by the Book of Mormon being forced on them. But if you understand that the Book of Mormon is a story of a smaller group in the Americas, not the story of every Native American, then the Book of Mormon can have its history of this group, and every Native American tribe can keep their sacred stories and have their own history as well. And that kind of hits home for me as a Navajo because, like I said earlier, my ancestors came from the Alaska area around 1000 AD, somewhere around there. So it's kind of impossible for them to have been direct Nephites or Lamanites. Yet a lot of Native American Latter-day Saints still consider themselves Lamanites. And I think that's fine, because if we go back to the political idea or a covenant idea, we could be Lamanites. But ancestrally or genetically, it's kind of impossible for us. Well, it's impossible for us to be directly Lamanites. Now, I mean, DNA does, we all have a common ancestor. DNA has almost pretty much proven that. So it's very possible that Lehi's genetics may have spread over 2,000 years, where it's a bit of it's in me to such a minuscule degree. So minuscule that I don't even think it should count as being a genetic Lamanite. And that's kind of something I'm trying to push back against. I don't really like being called Lamanite. It feels like an easy label that comes with, unfortunately, 19th century ideas on it. But I mean, if it's more of a covenant term, then it's fine. And like, I don't go around calling people Gentiles. That's just weird. So anyways, how to wrap this up, going back to just this political divide between it all, I think we just need to kind of admit when we're wrong and dive into the history and not be afraid. I mean, I plan on studying Native massacres on white people. But I could also tell just from the sheer number of massacres that it's way worse from white to natives. And that's not to say that white people are evil. That's just to say that, hey, let's all look at our history honestly. And if we, like, I kind of think of it as a therapist trying to get their patient to come to terms with past trauma. I mean, I think I took a huge step in my life when I looked back at my life, when I wrote down everything that I've done. I once mapped out my whole life, the past, and it was very therapeutic to say, okay, between this time and this time, I was dealing with some things. And then I remembered some things, and it was very therapeutic to learn more about myself and realize what I need to do to be a better person. And in America, we are kind of like the bully brother, the bully sibling, at least right now. I mean, at one point we are still great, but I mean, I'm just making a kind of not a perfect example here, but if America can realize that it has some dark history, and perhaps the reason we're out in the world right now bombing schools with little girls in it and bridges and holding Cuba hostage, horrible things. I mean, horrible things. I don't want to say we are terrorists, but I mean, currently we are abusing civilians. Now, I know there's a bunch of debate whether we're doing it purposely or yada, 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 but still, we're doing it. And why are we doing it? Well, maybe we need to look back at our history and learn more about this. And it probably starts from with how we treated Native Americans. Because for some reason, we justified all of that and pretty much deleted the history from our textbooks, from our Latter-day Saint textbooks. And so, I don't know, maybe the message of this video is the only way we can become better people is when we recognize our past, come to terms with it, maybe go through the grieving process. I'm going through a bit of the grieving process right now because I just got diagnosed with moderate inattentive ADHD, and I'm 40 years old, and that's actually pretty common to for inattentive ADHDers or silent ADHDers to not realize this until they're older, because it's easy to spot hyper ADHDers. Those symptoms are very noticeable, but inattentive ones, my mind is racing, but I'm quiet about it. And for a long time, I've wondered if it was me, if something was wrong with me. And I've come to find out that I don't think it's a debilitating, like, horrible mental disorder or anything. I actually think ADHD can be a superpower if harnessed right. There's a lot of amazing people I know with ADHD who have harnessed it right. But I wish I would have known. And so there's a bit of a grieving process, because first step is discovery and realizing you have it. And then the second step is kind of like depression, like, oh my gosh, my life would have been different if I would have known this. Maybe I wouldn't have spent 10 years in college. I spent 10 years to get a bachelor's degree. It took me forever because I was trying to find the perfect degree. I am grateful, though, that I just took a bunch of general academic classes, like a ton. I even got an associate's degree in general academics because I took so many. They were just like, yeah, just check that off. So I was happy that I was able to learn biology and finances and business and tons of fun, different random classes. Life in the universe, that one was fun. So anyways, but I did waste, it was 10 years gone. And so you start to recognize that okay, we're going off topic here. Sorry, we're going to make this fast. There's a grieving process, realizing you found it, bit of discouragement, then a bit of anger. You're kind of like, why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't my parents tell me? I talked to my coworkers. They were like, oh, I thought you already knew. Like, why, God? Why didn't you tell me? Like, I've been praying for 30 years, and that answer would have solved a lot of things from the past. But I guess you wanted me to know now. And then the last step is acceptance and dealing with it and working around it and becoming a better person, because now, first step is knowing, right? And that's kind of the message for America is let's study our history. Let's figure out why we're doing some of this crap. Let's figure out why the Republican Party went off the deep end, why Democrats got so woke, and let's learn history and fix it. So there's a personal message and a bigger message and a bit of introduction of this channel, I guess, for the few people listening. So thanks for watching. More is going to come. I've decided to just put a lot of focus in this channel, Native American history, especially with Latter-day Saints. Bit of politics. I'll try to maybe do it once a week instead of every day. A bit of theology. There's some things out there that I think we should all know, like the debate whether there's progression after final judgment. and that there were actually a lot of apostles who thought there was. Short answer is we don't know, but I think it's a beautiful thing if true. So anyways, lots of stuff coming on this channel. Thanks for watching, spending 35 minutes with me, and we'll see if I could do more videos like this, or if they'll be in my studio or what. But thanks. God bless, and let's just all work on becoming better people. Thanks. Bye.